Hey mommies, how are you? So I wanted to do this Facebook Live. This is so much fun. Because I've had a bunch of people asking me lately about weaning, and it's been something that I've been going through. Not so much because I voluntarily wanted to wean Isaac, but because he's kind of night weaned, and he's not weaned during the day. He still nurses pretty much like on demand. But it's a lot less than he was doing before. So he kind of, I don't know, part-time weaned. I don't know how I would call it. It's kind of strange and not something that I've come across very often. But it's pretty cool. I'm working with him and we're kind of going with the flow. And I think that's what the main thing is about. I think it's not so much about when's the right time to wean, but kind of look at the situation, your breastfeeding situation, your breastfeeding relationship with your baby or your toddler or your child. To see what's best for both of you. And I say both of you because breastfeeding is a relationship, so it's a two-way street. You both have to be in it together. You both have to be in agreement of how it goes, because it's not just, I mean, as much as the benefits are for the baby, and obviously we do it for our babies, it's really important that you feel comfortable, and the way that you feel is very, very important. So my tips in regards to that are, first of all, when you start to kind of think about weaning, a lot of the times also it's because other people are influencing you. So they're like, oh, your baby reached 6 months, or your baby reached 9 months, or your baby reached a year, so you should, think about stopping breastfeeding and weaning. Or maybe you have a particular situation where, for example, you're pregnant. So maybe you're thinking that it's not safe to be pregnant and breastfeeding, so you're thinking of weaning for that reason. Or maybe your son, your baby, whatever, is going to start going to preschool or going to nursery or daycare or something like that. So I just wanted to give you a few pointers in regards to some of those situations. So first of all, like I said, breastfeeding, there's not a right time or a wrong time to wean your baby or to stop breastfeeding. You don't have to. You can just continue for basically as long as you want, and as long as you and your baby are comfortable. The benefits of breastfeeding, they don't stop. So just because your baby turned 1 doesn't mean that your milk all of a sudden is no longer nutritious, or it's going to lose its benefits, or it's going to turn into water all of a sudden. So that's not true at all. Your baby's, the way that your milk supply changes is as long as your baby is evolving, and everything is transmitted, remember, through the baby's saliva. It goes through your nipple, your milk ducts, and then your milk is specifically tailored to meet your child's need during whatever development stage they're going through. So as they evolve, your milk is going to evolve to meet the child's nutritional needs. So that's pretty amazing, right? And the other thing too is, what you want to think of too is, depending on how your baby is acting, to see how what emotional and development challenges they're going through also. Because sometimes you might think, oh, my baby's already 1, or he's going to start daycare soon or something like that. Remember that there's going to be a lot of emotional changes going on with your child. And remember that breastfeeding is not just for food, it's also for comfort. So to be able to deal with all those emotional challenges, breastfeeding is going to help. So you definitely want to reconsider if you were thinking of weaning or stopping breastfeeding, because it's going to help with those things too. I can tell you from my personal experience, when I had Samuel, I stopped breastfeeding Samuel. He weaned when he was 13 months, and Isaac is still breastfeeding now, and he's 17 months. And their situations are completely different. Isaac is much more calm, much more secure and confident than Samuel was. And I felt that Samuel, sometimes he would retaliate with me, and it was this kind of like emotional struggle sometimes between us. And then kind of later reflecting on it, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he weaned so early on. And I think that if we had continued breastfeeding, it would have helped him with all those emotional challenges that he was going through. So that's something kind of to think about too. If your child is going to daycare or something like that, you do not have to stop breastfeeding. If you can pump, and you can take your breast milk so that they can feed it to your baby. You can make sure that you feed before you take your child to daycare. Once your baby gets home, if they're still, if they're night feeding, then that's perfect. But if they're not, you can feed them right before they go to bed. So it doesn't have to mean the end of your breastfeeding relationship. Your milk is not all of a sudden going to dry up. As long as your baby's still stimulating, you will have less milk, but you'll still have milk and you'll still have that breastfeeding relationship, okay? And the last one that I've been asked a few times too is, if you're pregnant, okay? If you're pregnant, you do not have to stop breastfeeding, okay? And a lot of doctors and nurses and people in the medical field, they will tell you, or they'll advise you to stop breastfeeding because it's risky and because breastfeeding is supposed to like trigger uterus contractions. Well, that can happen, but they're super light, they're not that strong, and they're not going to induce a miscarriage or induce labor, okay? So it's very, very safe to continue your breastfeeding relationship with your baby if you're pregnant. The only reason that it wouldn't be safe is, for example, if you've had a miscarriage, or if you had a premature baby, or if you have the risk of miscarriage, like if you're bleeding, things like that, basically that are risky. And kind of the rule is, if you've been told not to have sex while you're pregnant, you're probably better off to not breastfeeding while you're pregnant. So that's kind of a general rule, but obviously always check with your health provider, but check with other people in the medical field that maybe have more of a holistic approach, maybe with an IBCLC, someone like that, because usually like OBGYNs and stuff like that, they'll try to cover themselves from like lawsuits or like from the worst thing happening, you know, they always are like super cautious. So they're always going to tell you to wean your baby or to stop breastfeeding. But like I said, you do not have to at all. Unless you have a high risk pregnancy, it's perfectly safe for you to breastfeed while you're pregnant, okay? So just wanted to give those tips there about weaning. So basically, to kind of sum it all down, it's up to you and your baby, okay? You have to analyze your situation. There's no right time or wrong time. You can go all in Europe and in a lot of like kind of remote places, they breastfeed their child until they're like 7. That's when the molar teeth come in and the milk teeth start to disappear. And that's technically like in human nature when breastfeeding kind of stops. So there's really no right or wrong answer. It's just how you and your child feel in regards to your breastfeeding relationship. Bye, mommies.